Hello, good afternoon. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are said to be feeling anger and disbelief after a French magazine published photographs of the Duchess sunbathing topless. St James Palace said publishing the photos was a reminder of the worst excesses of the press and paparazzi during the life of Diana, Princess of Wales, while Clarence House called them a grotesque and unjustifiable invasion of privacy.
The photos were taken last week while the couple were staying at a chateau owned by the Duke's cousin. The magazine which published them say they contain nothing shocking. The royal couple were told about the photographs this morning during their visit to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, from where our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell reports.
News of the photographs had emerged overnight. At first, when they heard about them over breakfast, William and Kate were said to be saddened. They set out for their first engagement, a visit to a mosque, for which Kate had to be dressed demurely, with her head covered. Both of them removed their shoes. It wasn't until they'd left the mosque and after a visit to a nearby park that officials received copies of what the French magazine had published. Suddenly, the intensity of the reaction changed. Instead of sadness, there was fury. Officials who are used to dealing with the media began talking about a red line having been crossed. The couple's spokesman issued a statement. It spoke of a grotesque invasion of privacy. The statement went on. The incident is reminiscent of the worst excesses of the press and paparazzi during the life of Diana, Princess of Wales, and is all the more upsetting to the Duke and Duchess for being so. William and Kate had gone last week to the chateau in Provence, owned by William's cousin, Lord Lindley. It is, officials say, extremely secluded, and yet, unknown to the couple, a photographer was lurking nearby. The pictures which were taken appeared on the front and 5 inside pages of a French gossip magazine, which went on sale this morning. The magazine's editor defended their decision to publish the pictures.
One shouldn't dramatise these pictures. The reactions are a little disproportionate. What we saw in the pictures was a young couple that have just married, who are in love, who are beautiful.
The whole thing is uncomfortably reminiscent of the recent furore over Prince Harry in Las Vegas. And yet there's an important difference. Harry was at least partly to blame for what happened. The same can scarcely be said of William and Kate. In London this morning, people were sympathetic.
We have been there before with Princess Diana, and I think it should be addressed.
These people are looking with their long lenses, and they can pick up anything, can't they? But disgraceful, really.
The poor girl will be afraid to take her socks off anywhere she goes now.
Everywhere they go on a tour such as this, there are cameras on pretty much every side. That's something which, as members of the royal family, William and Kate have to accept. Last week, for a few days, they'd thought they were in private, and they lowered their guard. They are now paying the price.
Nicholas Witchell reporting. Well, Closer's editor, Laurence Piot, has defended her decision to print the photographs and says the reaction is disproportionate. We can hear some more of that interview now.
We
shouldn't be quite so dramatic about these photos. I think the reaction to them has been a bit disproportionate. What we can see in the pictures is a young couple who have just got married, who are in love and who are beautiful. She's the princess of the 21st century. They're on a balcony in a chateau in the south of France, which is not far from a road which cars can pass along without a problem. They are visible from the street. They're a young couple in love. She's a young woman who is topless, just like women who can be seen on beaches all over France and the rest of the world. They're pictures that are full of joy. They're not degrading. People have drawn parallels with the pictures of Prince Harry. It's got nothing to do with it. These pictures aren't degrading. She's topless, they're in love. He's putting sun cream on her. I mean, they're extremely soft. There we are. It's a nice series of photos which we have as a world exclusive for the moment. These are pictures that will go around the world, and that's our headline. And honestly, I don't know of a single celebrity magazine anywhere in the world that wouldn't have run these pictures if they'd had them. They wouldn't have hesitated for 2 seconds before publishing. We shouldn't be hypocritical.
So that's Laurence Piot's version of events there in France. Let's speak now to our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell, who, as you have seen, is travelling with the royal couple in Kuala Lumpur. How do you assess the level of anger about this, Nick, in royal circles?
Oh, intense. It's the greatest level of anger that I think I've heard from a royal palace, from royal spokesmen in the past 10 years, I would say. And undoubtedly it reflects the feelings particularly of Prince William. He is remembering what happened to his late mother at the hands of the media. He is determined, absolutely determined, to protect his wife from this sort of intrusion. They left Kuala Lumpur a couple of hours ago to fly on to Sabah in the Malaysian part of Borneo, where they'll be tomorrow. And the look on William's face was a look of absolute thunder. He just looked absolutely furious even then as he walked past the cameras. Kate, it must be said, looked still composed and was smiling. But Prince William, I think, is the driving force behind the anger that is being expressed on their behalf by St. James's Palace. They have, of course, now to take a very important, a big decision in consultation with their advisors and lawyers in both London and Paris as to whether they will pursue legal action against the photographer and or the magazine. And I would sense that William is minded to do so. And I think after the ferocity of the statements that have been issued by St. James's Palace, this phrase that a red line has been crossed, a grotesque invasion of privacy, in a way they have compelled themselves to actually take a stand, and the only way really of taking a stand is to go to law and to seek the protection of the French privacy laws.
And as you say, that is a huge decision, and if he decides to do that, enormous consequences in terms of coverage, quite apart from anything else.
Yes, it would prolong the story, but I suppose they would conclude that the damage has been done, that any magazine, any publication which is minded to publish these photographs will be doing so now. They will be hoping very much that no British newspaper or magazine will do so, and I think that phrase, a red line has been crossed, is a warning to the British newspaper and magazine industry that they will be watching and that they are minded to take action, and clearly this would be in breach of all the PCC guidelines. I think listening to the French editor of this magazine, she of course rather overlooks the fact that this was a very secluded spot, that they may be lovely photographs in her judgment, but the people in them absolutely did not want to be photographed at that particular moment and in a state of partial undress. And that is the cornerstone of the French privacy law. If you're on private property and you don't have the permission of the people who are being photographed, it is against the law. And I think that they must conclude that if they're not going to take action on this instance, when it would appear to be black and white in their favour, then when are they going to take a stand?
Nick, thank you very much for that. Nicholas Witchell there in Kuala Lumpur.
Well, let's talk about this a little further now. We can speak to Kate Williams, who is a royal historian. She joins us now via Skype from the south of France. Very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
We were hearing from the lady who decided to publish these pictures a little earlier, who said that this is all being over-dramatised and this is just some pictures of a young couple who are in love, a young, beautiful couple in love. Do you have any sympathy with that viewpoint? Is it being over-dramatised?
Well, no, not really. I don't at all. I mean, that's the accompanying article as well. It's like, oh, it's just a young couple in love, forgetting they were a future king and queen. Well, they're not just a young couple in love, because no one would take a photo of a young couple in love and stick them on the front of a magazine to try and sell copies. I mean, which is clearly what they've done. I mean, it is an invasion of privacy. It's very interesting that Closer magazine in the UK have said this has nothing to do with us, we wouldn't publish these pictures, we are complete two different magazines. It is an invasion of privacy, and the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge were on a private, secluded estate. There was they were a long way away from anyone. They were behaving just as the people do in the south of France. They were enjoying themselves, getting a proper tan, and these photos have been splashed everywhere. And I think it's very concerning, and it's very interesting what Nicholas Witchell was saying. If they're not going to take action here, when will they? Because simply, this is obviously going to keep on happening, and it has to be stopped, I think, if we're not going to have continual exposures. And I think the question is here, we love to see our royal family being more down to earth. That's what we'd like about William and Kate, particularly that Kate goes to high street stores to do her shopping, but she simply can't do that anymore if she's going to be followed by camera phones into changing rooms. I mean, it's really very concerning and very, very excessive, and I think that we simply have to think about our royal families, that, what do we want to see from them? They're being treated like big game celebrities, and we know that major female celebrities in the public eye, people like Madonna and Angelina Jolie, they sometimes are forced to go sunbathing in wetsuits because they know this is going to happen. And I think it's become excessive that this goes on, and it's really very concerning. And it will be very interesting to see if the palace do take a big strong line here, because they were quite muted in their response to the Harry photos. It does seem as if they're being much more intense here, much angrier, and of course making this comparison to Diana's death, to the fact that Diana was hounded by paparazzi. And these days, there's much more media, there's much more internet, there's much more camera phones. The royal governess of the Elizabeth II said royals are only private in the womb, and increasingly that's what it seems like is happening. Royals are being public property, and I think it's very unfair. They're being exploited for money, and there's nothing Kate can do about it.
Can I just pick you up on the point you made about parallels being drawn with the time of Princess Diana and the way she was hounded by paparazzi, if you like? You said these pictures are now everywhere. I mean, the fact is that they're not. They've only been published in one French magazine. They have been offered to British newspapers. We've had reports of that and were declined. I mean, it is a different era, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, these magazines, they are on sale. It's on sale in France. The French media here are showing the shots, but they're blacking out most of it. And the newspapers haven't reprinted them. So at the moment they're quite contained, but obviously the concern is of the palace that they're going to be reprinted, they're going to go onto the internet, people are going to be tweeting pictures of them, they're already copies for sale on eBay, you know, all that kind of thing. You know, we live in a global world now, and that's very difficult because, of course, our privacy laws, our laws are very much directed towards the British media, and as we saw with things like William and Kate's honeymoon photos, they were supposed to be published, and they were. An Australian magazine published them, and there was an embargo, of course, about Prince Harry being in Afghanistan. An Australian magazine published that by mistake, but they published his whereabouts by mistake. But in this global world in which the British royal family, one of the last remaining royal families, are a massive obsession across the world, photos of them are selling for huge amounts of money. And I think historians in the future are going to look back on this year and say, you know, this is the year in which the royal family soared in popularity in Britain, across the world. The royal wedding last year, the big celebrations for the Jubilee, the big celebrations for the Olympics, and so much attention on the royal family, marvellous attention, they're so popular, and at the same time, this is the reason why pictures of them are absolutely selling for so much and being on the front of all these magazines. It is because they are so popular, so it's rather a flip side, and I think they're very right, the palace, in saying they want to take immediate action, because these are simply private photos of two people on a private estate, and if they were, it's a bad precedent for all of us. You know, we shouldn't expect to see photos of ourselves wandering around naked in our houses on the front of the newspapers, and neither should they.
Okay, Kate Williams, thanks very much indeed for your time.